They've got on for him, still with Ronaldo Cephas. He's able to deliver the cross, and they've levelled it again!
Many Reggae Boyz fans are still buzzing from the team's recent exploits in London for the Unity Cup, and while it definitely was a great feeling, narrowly losing in the final, of course, we must now switch focus to the real business at hand, as it is now time for the 2026 World Cup qualifiers. Welcome back to Jump Hill Fun, and this is your British Virgin Island versus Jamaica preview show. And yes, I am back after a little break to break down this crucial match for the Reggae Boyz. And yes, despite the BVI being ranked 207th in the world out of 209 according to FIFA, this game is of great importance purely down to Jamaica's goal difference in the second round Group H standings. Jamaica are currently in second place in the table with 6 points, with a +2 goal difference behind Guatemala, who also have 6 points but has a +9 goal difference. Info on how teams will be placed in the groups for the next phase of action is a bit murky, so I still want Jamaica to finish first in the table to possibly give us an easier path to the World Cup in the final qualifying round. So the boys will need at least 7 goals this Saturday to match Guatemala when they travel to the A.O. Shirley Recreation Ground. So on that note, we should expect a very aggressive starting 11 by Steve McLaren, as we can expect to have majority of the ball and will be taking on a team that is most likely going to sit back and defend with 2 banks of 4. In fact, against Dominica in a 3-0 defeat this past Wednesday, the Islanders trotted out a 4-4-1-1 but didn't exactly sit in that low block. However, I fully expect a different approach against Jamaica, similar to their approach when Guatemala visited last year. They are also a team that likes to pass the road a bit and keep possession before attempting to spring one of their speedy wingers going forward. They also rely heavily on long throws into the opponent's box to cause some chaos that they can take advantage of when they get the chance. But honestly, they offer nothing that the Reggae Boyz simply can't handle. Jamaica's defense line, on the other hand, has to make sure they remain switched on, especially when they are attacking, as we have seen in previous matches against St. Vincent and Dominica. We are sometimes caught up by raw speed. But this game will mostly boil down to how much chances we can create against a low block and how many of those chances we can convert. This is where the Unity Cup came in handy. In that mini tournament, we scored 5 goals in 2 games against some decent teams, which should have done wonders for our attackers' confidence. Over there, McLaren finally got to use his favored 4-3-3 setup instead of a 4-4-2, and I can't see us deviating from that in this match. Expect 2 out of the 3 midfielders acting more like double 10s than double 8s, as I expect them to largely hover at the edge of the BVI's 18-yard box, with the likes of King and Oldgate giving free license to carry the ball way beyond the half line to add more bodies in the final third. Our wingers will also be in the spotlight. They will have to be brave, taking on the 1v1s when they can, because I expect a lot of double teaming from the BVI team in the fullback areas to try and negate the strongest part of our game. Our fullbacks will also need to have their squaring boots on, as BVI are susceptible to the cutback into the box from the byline. And then there's our starting number 9. A lot of people were surprised by Romara Williams' inclusion this time around, but with both Nicholson and Antonio being unavailable, Williams is the next traditional target forward on the conveyor's belt to bring in a nice contrast to the more running style of Warner Brown and Burrell. With BVI looking to clog their 18-yard box, Williams may play a pivotal role on Saturday. Another possible hindrance to the Reggae Boyz will be the environment. The pitch at the A.O. Shirley Recreation Ground is not the largest, and don't expect a buttery smooth pitch to help snappy combination plays in and around the box either. Recent pictures depict a very lush but dry surface, and also the game will be at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, which may mean a majority of the match be playing in sweltering heat. But again, Jamaica, knock on wood, should have no troubles versus BVI. Alright, now it's time to look at 3 key players to keep an eye on for both squads, and we will begin with Ravel Morrison. It's crazy to think that a couple weeks ago, Ravel was on the outside looking in, but here we are at our World Cup qualifiers and he's in the squad. And I will say, this type of game is tailor-made for his strengths. As previously stated, I expect the Reggae Boyz to have plenty of the ball in the final third, but will be facing a huge wall en route to goal. We have struggled mightily in the recent past to dismantle such walls, with many fans screaming for the return of Ravel to clear the path. Well, now his time has come, but it will be up to Steve McLaren if he starts or comes on later in the match. It may all depend on his fitness levels ahead of the match. Alright, the next player we're going to highlight is of course Ronaldo Cephas. He was by far the player of the tournament at the Unity Cup, and his confidence should be sky high. His speed was as lethal as ever, but he finally showed some proper execution in the final third. You will think he's not droppable at the moment, but I would argue these type of games don't really suit his current skill set. BVI will play a very low block, and I will try their best to deny him any space in behind, so he will have to adapt his game in such a scenario where he had previously struggled with before. The second match against St. Vincent comes to mind, but with the form he's currently on, he should be more than okay. And finally, we'll take a look on Dexter Legmakisa. After his stellar performances in the 2023 National League final rounds, many of us believe that the right back position was locked up for many years to come. But since then, a combination of injuries and too many transfers has robbed Dexter on the real progression to his game since then. Add the fact that he looked out of sorts in Jamaica's last match against Nigeria, so it's fair for people to be worried that the right back position might be in danger. But this game is also tailor-made for his skill set, and since he is practically the only attacking right back in the squad, this is his moment for redemption. One I hope he grabs with both hands going forward. Alright, so those are the key Jamaican players. Time to look on those players from the BVI. Starting with their new recruit, Javon Splat. Yes, they brought in a brand new attacker, a 24-year-old forward straight out of England, who made his debut just this past Wednesday against Dominica. I won't pretend to know too much about the player, but from what I gather in that match, he's pretty fast and they will look to try exploit him to hold the ball or stretch the field. And he does also have some pedigree, and he might be a player that McLaren is well aware of as well, because he hails for the Derby County Academy. Alright, their other key player is the number 10 Tyler Forbes. Before Splat came into the picture, he was the main man up top. Although he's more seen as a traditional second forward, but he can play as the lone striker, in behind the striker or on the wing. Another thing I've gathered about him is that apparently he's very fast, so we need to keep an eye on him on the counters. But the last player I want to look at for the British Islanders is the player called Jerry Wilshere. The 29-year-old is one of the older players in that back line, and with his team expecting to have a long day defending, he will be key to try their best to keep the Jamaicans off the scoreboard. But alright, that's practically the preview. But before I go, I would like to give my predicted starting 11. Steve McLaren might trot out, and I believe he will stick with that 4-3-3, which means, of course, Captain Andre Blake will start in goal. Lembe Keeks, I think, is a shoo-in at right back, and he will be joined by his fellow Unity Cup back line in terms of Holgate, King, and Bella left back. Midfield is where things get a little bit interesting. I still expect us to play with a 1-6 and then 2 10s. So Hayden will slot in at number 6, and I think Palmer will get the nod as well. But I actually think it will be Damari Gray playing also in the number 10 role instead of Ravel Morrison, as I think they're still going to worry a bit about his fitness. Which leaves us with the front three. At left wing, I expect Ronaldo Cephas to get his chance based on his form. I think number 9 position will go to Burrell over Warner Brown. And that brings us to the last position on the right, and I think that spot will go to Leon Bailey, just because I think on sheer experience, he will get the nod over Dixon. But anyway guys, thank you all for joining in on this preview show. Thank you all for watching, and please like, subscribe and share as we look to keep you all up to date on everything on the Reggae Boyz, especially through these crucial World Cup qualifiers. Otherwise, for great Reggae Boyz content, you're already at the right place. Jump Fan. YouTube, big up yourself.